Hi class, so we are already on our second chapter in this subject, understanding culture, society, and politics, and I'm actually excited to discuss with you our topic for today. So today we are going to talk about the different sociological or theoretical approaches or perspectives or paradigm, whichever we would like to call it, in our study of society. Different sociologists have had different takes on how the society or the study of society should be viewed. And this is what we are going to talk about today. So in these approaches that we are going to look into later, we would view them from these two types of analysis, which are the macro level and the micro level analysis. So at the macro level, it examines the whole societies, the large scale social structures, and social systems. So it is viewed from a bird's eye view. It sees the bigger picture, while the micro-level analysis focuses on small groups rather than on large-scale social social structures. So it actually focuses on the interactions, the dynamisms in those small groups in the society. So this is the common question that these three theoretical perspectives should be able to answer. What shapes society? So since they are three different approaches or perspectives, they have, of course, very diverse views on what actually shapes society. And these are as follows. They are as follows: structural functionalist approach, conflict approach, and symbolic interactionist approach. Here are some photos to give you a glimpse of it, which I got from the slideshow of Khan Academy. I cannot zoom it in, but if you would notice from the photos or the illustrations themselves, you would already have an idea of what they actually focus on. And from there, from the title itself, the terms themselves. Let's start. So first is the structural functionalist approach. This approach views society as a complex system whose parts work together to promote solidarity and stability. This approach actually operates on a macro level, meaning it has a wide lens in viewing things. How does that happen? It focuses on the social structures of the society. Those social structures come in the form of the social institutions, the different sectors of the society, and even the culture or the different cultures that are embedded in the society. Basically, everything that's going on in the society actually is deemed as something that promotes or helps to maintain order and stability in the society. So this approach, it has been used or famous until the mid 19 it's actually the 20th century, so 1900s. So the proponents of this approach are yung mga famous na tao that actually has the same or have the same vision or view on things are, of course, Auguste Comte, being the father of sociology, and Emile Durkheim, and also Robert Merton, among many others. So that's how they view society. For example, even the bad things that happen in a society, for example, crime, they would view crime from this approach as something that is positive or necessary in a society because it serves a certain function that actually helps in keeping the society running. So if we would put it in today's today's context. For example, even this pandemic, if it would be viewed from a structural functionalist approach, it would be deemed as something as necessary in order to keep our society to hold it together. So they would defend that the different institutions actually work together now in order to solve this problem. Had it not happened, there would be no new innovations or better solidarity among citizens and all that. So that's how functionalist approach views things. In this approach, Robert K. Merton identified the different functions or classified functions into two, primarily two. So the first one is manifest function, which pertains to open, stated, and conscious functions of whatever that role or institution or endeavor is. They involve the intended recognized consequences of an aspect of society. For example, in the education sector, a university or a college, its purpose or manifest function is to be a center for education for excellence or to produce graduates that would be part of the workforce in the future to maintain the economic balance of the society. So, yun yung manifest function ng mga schools or universities. They are the intended or open stated and conscious functions. So, lahat ng hindi na yung institution or the things that exist in society, they have manifest functions. And on the other hand, we also have latent function. So latent functions are unconscious or unintended functions that may reflect the hidden purposes of an institution. Uh, that is not always the case, no? That there are hidden purposes. Most often than not, when these, um, for example, an institution is laid and then the its purposes, its plans were set, they of course intended only for that institution to produce graduates who would be part of the workforce, to be a center for excellence, and all that. But again, they wouldn't intend the university to become a place where these students would actually meet their lifetime partners. And that actually happens. There are some successful stories of high school sweethearts, for example, ending up getting married in their later life. So of course, the university or a certain university wouldn't intend that to be one of its purposes, but it just happened, it just unfolded. Hence, it is a latent function or an unintended unconscious function of a university. Now, if we are going to put or give another example in the context of the current state of our society, now in the time of the pandemic, one of the latent functions would be micro enterprises or small enterprises booming. Diba? Who would have thought that, for example, a person who just suddenly lost his or her job would be creative enough to think of getting another source of income by opening a new or sell something. Sorry, na-distract ako. Yeah. So, ito, unintended function siya, di ba, nang nangyayari sa kasalukuyan. Na people would be selling or offering different stuff, may it be a product, food mostly, and even services. How, for example, the photography services have emerged from live photography. I don't actually know the exact terms, but shooting, for example, face to face or live, into digital or what do you call this? or having the shots done virtually. Like for example, they have the subject or the client right in the screen. They will shoot them or capture the shot from the screen itself. So these are latent functions that are again unintended, but they just unfold as different situations arise. Merton also identified social dysfunction. If there are functions, social dysfunctions also happen. So this refers to an element or process of a society that may actually disrupt the social system and stability. So if we are going to use the example that we've had a while ago, there's a educational institution, a dysfunction would be if, for example, there would be a school bombing, or for example, if there would be hazings or somebody would die because of hazing, that in itself is a dysfunction. It disrupts the very purpose or function of that institution. In our current state, if we give an example for this, an example of a disruption would be if there would actually be a revolutionary government in such a time as this. Or even if, for example, there would be hoarding of face masks, it disrupts the very function of helping each other out to be protected and to get uh, enough amount of the equipment and supplies that we need to protect ourselves from the virus. So those and many more can serve as a social dysfunction. I will be asking you guys later in our live session of some other examples that you can provide. So before we dive into the next approach, it must be clear with us that the structural functionalist approach, its vision is the society is actually orderly and stable. It has that yun nga, positive view in a sense na hindi niya nakikita or nadi-disregard niya yung ibang realities sa society such as there is actually inequality. So this approach provides for what the first approach was lacking. Anyway, salamat Shopee. uh, this approach gained popularity in the last 2 decades, 2 or 3 decades, because the inequality in our society is very apparent. So, have I? No, I haven't read the definition yet, but you can see it already in the slide. I hope you already read it while I was doing an intro on this. But yeah, it is something that sees society, this approach sees the society as an arena of inequality that generates conflict and change. So it therefore highlights inequality and change. Social patterns benefit some people while it harms some. So, this approach, kung masyadong positive, if we may quote, yung view ng structural functionalist, eto naman masyadong natin gamitin yung term negative. Critical, no, yung view niya sa society. So, ilabas natin ang picture ni Marx, the cartoonized version ni Marx from Beagle, of course. What can we highlight here? Ayan, again, arena of inequality. So basically, this approach focuses or tackles the different kinds of inequalities in the society. Class inequality, gender, race, and all that. So the goal of this approach at the end of the day is to promote change. Dahil merong kasalukuyang problema ng inequality, dapat matugunan yon with a change. So, si Marx, ayan, bilang um, ama ng komunismo, although there are a lot of scholars who would, of course, not support that claim na he didn't actually, he wasn't for communism. But anyway, mahabang usapin yan. No? It would take not only one series of lecture, a lot of lectures focusing on Marx and his ideas together with Engels. Engels were chart. Uh, so, just a brief overview of yung focus ng kanyang hinaing, ng theory niya is, or study niya, uh, rather, would be on class struggle or class inequality. Nakita ni Marx, of course, during his time that the bourgeoisie or the owners of the means of production have treated the proletariats or the workers, those who produce uh, or those who actually work for these bourgeoisies, they were treated unfairly, unequally. And that's why there has to be a change. As long as that kind of structure exists, it would go on. So, parang makita niya yun as we can use a pyramid as an illustration. Ito pala, pinaka-highlight. Ben. The majority are actually proletariats nandito sa lower part of the food chain. And then there are few elites on top who form on these bourgeoisies. And they're on top because of these people who are at the bottom. Now, if they would revolutionize and see how unfairly they are treated, all of these bourgeoisies on top would go down or be at par with them and get equal shares of the resources. So, ayan, this analysis of Marx gave birth to others seeing other forms of inequality in society, such as race inequality, gender inequality, and many more types of inequality or conflict. So that's how this approach views the society. So, for example, if we are going to use the university again that we have used a while ago as an example, it sees these universities as a training ground for future workers who would be treated unfairly, or these universities as an arena for inequality because basically the system promotes competition, unhealthy competition, in the sense that there would be students who are on top and definitely there would be students who are at the bottom with the system of education that most universities have. So, ganoon. Yun yung focal point or nakikita ng social conflict approach. In the current pandemic, it can be viewed as an arena for inequality or that generates conflict, such as, again, there are minority groups that are being disregarded. All the more with the current pandemic, there are um, the distribution of resources and supplies are not even. For example, some communities do not receive the 4 Ps, while others have a generous amount of supply, or we can even extend the resources or the funds even to those who are not eligible for 4 Ps. Hence, generates conflict, inequality. here are just some photos that would depict what social conflict approach focuses on. For example, here the inequality is very apparent in the form of racial discrimination. In this ad of Red Cross, it is shown here that most of those who were deemed as cool, bulugan natin with yellow, cool, who else is cool here? Basically, dalawa. And if you would observe, they are whites, and those who are depicted as not cool are the black ones. I mean, it's very sublime. This one's a, I don't know if it's an Asian guy, he has a black hair and somewhat fair skin, but not as fair as these people who are deemed as cool here. And this one, another one, the one pushing the girl, black veil, and the snake nila for that. So, yeah, these sublime messages in an ad such as this will depict how racial discrimination is still apparent. Waiting for the picture to appear. These are actual advertisements, and hindi nga sublime, it's very obvious, it's very evident how racial discrimination is actually portrayed here in these photos. So here are some photos or actually ads during the 50s and the 70s. These are actually ads, guys, before. And of course, ads are there, they serve as their function is to promote whatever, to help promote whatever that product is. And these products sell. These ads actually help these products sell. We can see here that gender inequality is very apparent. Patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and even misogyny. And these things are deemed normal during that time. Kaya nga, they're put in the ads. And this one, I find this one the most ridiculous. So, wala lang, ano lang, normal lang sa kanila yan during that time. So, ito yung mga nakikita nga ng conflict perspective as forms of inequality. And lastly, we have the symbolic interactionist approach or perspective. This one views the society as the product of everyday interactions of individuals. So if the first two approaches operate on a macro level of analysis, this one it operates on a micro level because it focuses not on the structures, on institutions, or even large groups, but on the individuals, the interactions of individuals. In social encounters, each person's interpretation or definition of a given situation becomes a subjective reality. So from the words symbolic and interactionist or interactionism, we create symbols, and every day in those symbols mark our interactions. This is a world of symbols, and in our everyday lives, in our non-verbal cues, in our verbal cues, in the visuals, we would see a lot of symbols. And it has a cyclical relationship with our interaction with others. As we interact with others, the more symbols or different symbols are being created in those interactions. And again, our interactions wouldn't take place if we wouldn't use symbols to interact with each other. So how we make sense of those interactions or how we give interpretations of those becomes our subjective reality as per the symbolic interactionist approach. That our reality is actually subjective. Whatever we make up of it is what makes it itself or real. Our beliefs and value system are shaped by these interactions actually that we have. So, ang laki din ng role na piniplay nitong our individual lives and interactions in what's happening on the society at large. To give an example for this, again, kung gusto natin yung mga universities or educational institutions, a lot of people would actually want to go to the top four universities, of course, not only for the uh, excellent education that it gives, but also yung pangalan or prestige na kalakip ng pagpasok doon sa mga schools or universities na yun. Also, a lot of people go to Starbucks not because of the coffee itself, because to be honest, Dunkin' Donuts coffee is way better. This is not a paid advertisement, just real talk. But why a lot of people would go to Starbucks? Of course, some would defend that it's for the ambience and all, but now apparently it becomes like Jollibee. This was during the pre-COVID, na napupuno talaga yung stores, and then you would hear the chit-chats, the chatters of everyone. Cannot really have your relaxing time with your book. Just focus on the work that you are doing. So anyway, may kalakip kasing pangalan or status symbol actually, yung Starbucks. Kaya yung ibang tao ay pumupunta doon na dating hindi naman, for example, coffee drinkers would automatically become coffee drinkers or just a flat drinker because Starbucks is Starbucks. It has a name, and you would be deemed as someone who has quite a good amount of money or resources if you go to Starbucks. So, basically, ang daming nangyayari sa society. Our individual choices as well, no, that would um, fall under what this approach focuses on. These symbols, why you buy this brand over this brand, why you eat some, do you really like it, or because it's a fad, those symbols. So these are some insights that you can take note of with regards to symbolic interactionist approach. That it is instrumental in helping people derive meanings from social situations. In social encounters, each person's interpretation or definition of a given situation becomes their subjective reality, and we often assume that what we consider to be reality is shared by others. Kaya merong mga shared meanings and symbols across uh, different societies. Alright, let's do it. So just to illustrate things, if you are a visual learner, I hope this visual or illustration helps. If you have not understood any of the things that I have said or almost anything in our lecture a while ago, I hope this helps. This one depicts the functionalist perspective, the different parts working together to maintain stability and order in the society. And this one, of course, the ones on top are the bourgeoisies, or that's for the class conflict. But in any types of conflict, and the ones on top are the ones who hold power. Hence, there's an imbalance because simply because they are on top, and there are a lot of people who are here at the bottom. And uh, Yeah, this basically represents conflict perspective or social conflict perspective. And lastly, this looks like an abstract because an abstract symbolizes symbols. So these serves, I guess, as symbols, and it looks like an abstract of interactions. That's why it pretty much depicts the symbolic interactions. Perspective. Let's wrap things up. Actually, we've already mentioned everything and just refer to this table if you want a review on these different sociological approaches or perspectives. Again, these two, the structural functionalist and the conflict approach, both operate on the macro level, and the symbolic interactionist, that's the title here, perspective, operates on the micro level of analysis. Yes, that is on purpose. The font size is really small because micro. So here provided, it's also provided the different views or focuses or focal points of each approach, which we have already mentioned in our discussion. So of course, you'll have your homework, and this reading material will be provided in your LMS as well as the questions for your homework. So hopefully you have had a better grasp of the study of or how to study the society through these three different lenses. We would be using this actually in our subsequent topics on the different institutions, the government, education, health, etc., religion, and even on topics such as deviance, culture, crime, among many others, gender, race, equality. So that's it for today. I hope you have learned something, and we'll still process this in our live sessions. I'm hoping to gather valuable insights from you guys as well. See ya!